Did you know that Kestra has support for single sign-on using OpenID Connect? I'm going to walk you through how you can set this up and get it working in your Kestra instance. To start with, I'm going to use Authenticate here to be my single sign-on provider. You can use other providers too, like Google, Microsoft, Keycloak, and Okta. Once you've got the single sign-on providers set up, it's as simple as just connecting it with OpenID Connect. I have Authenticate here set up, ready for me to configure it as my single sign-on provider in Kestra. I'm going to quickly walk you through how you can set up an application in Authentic and then use those details to connect it to Kestra. First, I'm going to go to application and press create with provider. I'm going to simply call it Kestra and then press next. Now Kestra uses OAuth 2 and the OpenID provider, so we're going to select that and then press next. For the authorization flow, we're going to select explicit consent and then we're going to go down. And now here we can see our client ID and our secret ID. So I'm going to copy that and paste that into Kestra, where under my Kestra configuration, under the environment variable Kestra configuration, under Micronaut, I've got security, OAuth 2, then it says enabled, and then I've got my clients. And in this scenario, I'm using Authentic, but if you were using Google or Microsoft, you would specify that here. Now I've got the client ID, I'll also get that client secret, and I will paste that in there. We'll come back to the OpenID issuer in a little bit. Last thing we need to do is add a redirect URI so that once we've logged in, Authentic knows where it should send back to Kestra. And so for Kestra to know that it's all working, we're just going to put a simple HTTP localhost, which is where Kestra is hosted. But again, put the domain in here for where you have Kestra hosted. We're going to do OAuth/callback/Authentic, just like so. After that, we can now press next. We can now bind some users. So I've set up a couple of users already. If you've got some users set up on your directory, you can use those too. So here I can set myself up. I can click save. I can also bind two other users I have here called Sarah and John. And then when I press next, I'll be able to press submit and the application will get saved. Now, if I go into my application here, I can actually click into my provider. We'll see a load of useful URLs. And I mentioned earlier, we're going to need the OpenID configuration issuer to be able to access it inside of Kestra. And we can see if I go to the configuration, that's the field here. Now, one slight change is we are going to need to have this hosted, not using localhost. So I'm going to switch to a hosted version of Authentic for this to work. Now that I've got this hosted with a domain name, I'm able to copy that OpenID configuration issuer and I can now paste that into Kestra. So now we're ready to be able to start up Kestra and be able to log in with Authentic. One other thing you might want to consider doing too is under the Kestra block inside of the Kestra configuration, you might want to add a default role. So when a new user logs in, they aren't just given no permissions and unable to do anything. I've just got a simple admin role here that's going to give people some pretty generous permissions. I'd recommend maybe toning this down a little bit, suiting your scenario. We can see that when I log in with Kestra, we get the option to log in with Authentic rather than just using the username and password. And if you have multiple single sign-on providers, they will be available here at the bottom. Now, when I select Authentic, it's now going to redirect me to that sign-on page where I can then type in my username and password. In this scenario, I'm going to log in with my original user. And when I log in, it notifies me that I'm going to log into Kestra and it's going to pass some of my details to Kestra, such as my email address. Now, when I press continue, we'll see that I'm now logged into Kestra and I can actually go to IAM to see that my user was successful and that I logged in both with basic because I had an original username and password, but also using the Authentic provider. I can sign in as different users too. So if I click here and sign in as Sarah, for example, I can then sign in with her username and password and it's going to redirect me and suggest that I again warn me that it's going to pass information on. And then when I press continue, it's going to log me in and it's going to automatically give me that default admin role that I set up in the configuration. We can see under users here that Sarah has only been able to log in with Authentic and she has never been given a username and password just for Kestra. So this is a fantastic way for being able to enable your users to be able to log into Kestra easily with an existing credential provider rather than having to dish out usernames and passwords to all of your users. Hopefully you found that useful and you're going to be able to start using single sign-on inside of Kestra to enable your users to easily access what they need. Let us know in the comments below if you want to see guides for other single sign-on providers if that would be useful to you.